Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for welcoming me. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about my story and a little bit about disruptive sustainability. As was already described, my company is Element 4. I am the founder and the managing director of Element 4. We are a sustainability consultancy based in London, but we work for clients mainly in the UK, but all over the world. And what we do is we work with an approach that we call disruptive. And the reason that it's disruptive is because I've been doing this for a very long time and realized that what we have been doing simply doesn't work. And so we need a completely new way of addressing corporate sustainability if we're going to tackle the climate and ecological crisis. So let me take you back to the beginning of my corporate journey. This is me. This is me, the one in the red hat, by the way, just in case you were wondering. This is me doing sustainability. Okay, so I think first of all, we have a problem here about the word sustainability. And you'll have to forgive me because I don't know what that word is in other languages. But certainly in English, what it's become is a way of saying environmental management. But really, that's not what it is. What sustainability is about how you can sustain a successful enterprise into the long-term future. And what that means is that you must take account of things like environmental issues. But it doesn't just mean environmental issues. And so I think fundamentally we've got a misunderstanding about what this word means and what the people who do this thing have responsibility for. So here I am on this picture, aged about 20. I'd come out of university. I was the first ever environment manager for this major contractor. And I spent my time doing really important things. You know, I was reducing waste and I was training people to reduce pollution. And we were making sure we were protecting nature and stopping things like setting fire to rubbish on building sites. You know, things that were really toxic. And they were good environmental management, and we had some really good successes early on. You know, we reduced pollution from construction quite a lot. But we weren't tackling the fundamental problems within our industry. We were just doing little bits. And that's no real surprise, because there I was, a young woman fresh out of university with no real construction experience, with this responsibility to take on sustainability. So I'm sure many of you will work in organizations. Maybe you are the sustainability manager. Maybe you work in organizations that have a sustainability manager. The problem is that person is most likely to have low levels of experience in the industry, is likely to not be empowered sufficiently with a lot of budget, potentially, with a lot of decision-making capability within the organization. And they are given the responsibility to make a whole company more sustainable. Now, you know, talk about an impossible job. That's almost the definition, and we're actually seeing a real mental health crisis with sustainability professionals who go into the industry trying to make a difference and find that they really can't. So this was where I was in industry trying to change a whole company. Now, then this happened. At the end of 2018, the IPCC produced their global warming of 1.5 degree report. And this was a really important report because it told us that we only had 12 years before the world hit some catastrophic tipping points. And those tipping points meant things like the Arctic permafrost would start to melt, the oceans would warm, releasing methane into the atmosphere. The Greenland ice sheet would reach a critical level of reduction, and that these were things that we then could not reverse. And once those things happened, we would then enter into runaway climate change that was way out of control, and we didn't know where that would go. Now, when that report came out, you may remember, the Amazon was on fire. Australia was on fire. You know, there were huge fires in the UK as well, and I'm sure from all of the places where you are, you're familiar with this story. In the UK as well, we had these amazing BBC documentaries with David Attenborough, Saint David Attenborough, you know, the man who's trying to save the planet on his own in our country. And he released these documentaries which were talking about, they were really showing us in really emotional ways the impact that our resource consumption was having on the planet. And this is a still of some illegal logging that's taking place and destroying the habitat of orangutans. And these pictures from faraway countries that were directly connected to the work that I was doing in construction. You know, we're massive consumers of timber. We are massive importers of material from all over the world, and also massive emitters of carbon. So the construction sector globally and in the UK emits about 40% of our emissions, our carbon emissions. And so this is our sector is directly responsible for a massive part of this problem. And having known from my work that I was trying to do the best I could, but I was having very little impact, this sent me into a real personal crisis, because I realized that during the time that I had been working, during that last 20 years, really all I had managed to do was give my employers the language to talk about sustainability in a really confident way, and given them the token projects where we'd managed to achieve great things on 1 or 2 projects that they could then put all over their website and in all of their brochures and put in front of all of their investors as examples of how good they were at sustainability. I'd done that, I'd given them the language, but I knew that that was only maybe 1% of the work that they were carrying out. And the other 99% of what they were doing was just business as usual. And this really sent me into a deep, deep personal crisis. And I spent a lot of time awake in the middle of the night, going down all kinds of rabbit holes on social media, looking at videos of terrible things happening around the world. And I just didn't know what to do about it. I was in deep climate anxiety. And then it got to spring 2019. And Extinction Rebellion took over central London. Now, when Extinction Rebellion took over London, I saw it on the television like everybody did. But it seemed other. You know, it didn't seem like it was for me. I was a professional, you know, I was an engineer, I was somebody who was inside this and I understood it. And they were just crazy people out on the street. But it was when my sister came to stay with me for the weekend, and she just turned to me and she simply said, "I'm really surprised you're not there." And it was that one sentence that changed my life. Because when she said that to me and reflected it back to me, my own prejudice about other people who were suffering in the same way that I was suffering, I suddenly realized that I needed to be there. And so that day, I packed my bag, I took my son. So this little boy in the white t-shirt is my son, was my son, I have to say. He's now a big teenager. This was when he was cute. So this was when he used to enjoy spending days with me. We packed our bags, we went, and we almost went as tourists into London to go and look at what was going on, you know, so we could just go and have a look. But the minute that we came out of the tube station where the big Extinction Rebellion camp was, immediately this wonderful guy bounded over to us and said, come and join us, have a drum, have some coffee, you know, there's some monks over here, some Buddhist monks, they've made vegan curry, come and have some, it's free, you know. And immediately I just got sucked into this community of really beautiful, really friendly, really scared, but passionate people. And from that day, I've identified myself as being an activist. And that is really deeply what changed my life. And I became a street activist. So I was out with Extinction Rebellion, blocking traffic, doing all those annoying things, I'm really sorry, that stop you getting to work. But blocking the traffic, using my anxiety and my grief to actually express that and to build community and build connections. And then I took that energy back to work with me. And I actually left my job. And I re-established my own company. So I set up my company originally in 2003. Then I re-established it in 2019, and I established it as an activist organisation. And this is me talking outside the Bank of England at one of our uprisings, talking about the financing of fossil fuels. But what I then realised as well is, as a professional, I could do more. I could do more than just sit in the street and bang drums. I have a network, I have an education. You know, I'm an educated, white, middle-class woman who lives in London. There's more I can do for social justice and for other people around the world who don't have a voice. There's much more. And so what I did was I decided, I'd known for some time, and I'd been protesting about a waste incinerator in my local neighbourhood. And this waste incinerator, that's a whole presentation on its own, the problem with waste incineration, because this now has become a false solution. It's something that companies are saying is a solution to waste and energy. Really, it's not. It's just creating more problems. But anyway, I'd been protesting for some time against this waste incinerator, and I realised that what I could do was actually get legal. So I met a legal team. That's a whole story on its own. I met some lawyers, and we built a case, and we took the UK government to court over their failure to limit waste incineration and their failure to tax the carbon emissions that come from major polluting industries like waste, like agriculture, like transport. And so this letter landed through my letterbox one day, and I have to tell you that there's nothing that makes you feel like a grown-up quicker than having a letter come through your door that confirms that you're taking the government to court. So that was quite an interesting morning of me looking at that going, oh my God, there's no going back from this. And this picture here is a picture of the High Court in London. So we went to the High Court. I crowdfunded my legal fees. So I managed to raise £50,000. Just purely through crowdfunding. I'm not a wealthy person, I can't finance this myself, but it was an amazing way of connecting with people, and so much of what I do is about community now, because we cannot fix these problems on our own. We need to come together. And because I stood up and took action on this particular issue, a lot of people came and found me, and I found so much support, and people I'm still now friends with came to support me in this campaign. And to cut it short, I was successful in changing the law. So now waste incineration is not only taxed, but my legal case set a precedent, a new law that actually all regulation that's now set by the UK government must take the Paris Agreement into account. Now, prior to my legal case, you won't believe it, but prior to my case, that was not the case. The government didn't have to take the Paris Agreement into account, and it was only my case that then set that example going forwards. So what I want to say is that, yes, I can stand here and tell you all of these things, and, you know, aren't I amazing, and round of applause for me. That's not what it's about. No. I'm being sarcastic. I'm being sarcastic. That's not really why I'm saying it. Why I'm saying it is because I'm just I'm an engineer working in construction. I'm not a lawyer. You know, I'm not a climate scientist. But I, in my industry, saw that something was wrong and used my privilege and my network and my ability to connect people to do something about it. And so my first thing here is, you all have influence. And you may not know exactly what that is, and it won't be the same as somebody else's influence, but you have influence in your world, whatever that is, in your particular sector. You have knowledge, you have connections that other people don't have, and you can use that to do more than just the things that we're told we should do, which is things like carry a reusable water bottle, you know, buy recycled trainers, turn down your energy, you know, fly less. Yes, they're all good things to do, but they're not ways of changing things at scale. And what we need now is scale. So always think about how you can use your influence. So how to do this? First of all, there's just me, just one of us. But we're all part of a network. Now that network, first of all, let's look at your personal network. So your personal network, you may have influence, depends how many friends you've got, frankly, but one-to-one connections, that's going to be in the tens, you know, 100 or so people you're actually going to have a connection with. And they will be people like your friends and relatives. Word of caution here, don't try and bring your friends and relatives necessarily on the climate journey with you, because it makes for some very difficult dinner conversations. So you can try, but you have those connections. And I tell you what I found was that my friends and family came along with me once they saw the success I was having, but they initially advised me that they thought I was a little bit crazy. But you know, you may have different friends and family. You're a colleague, you're a mentor, you're potentially an employer. You know, you can use your influence there to potentially influence tens, maybe 100 or a couple of hundred people. But you also have a local network, and that local network within your industry, for example, means that you might be a purchaser, a buyer of products. You might be an investor. You know, if you have a pension, for example, you are an investor. If you have a bank account, you know, if you have savings, you can choose where that money goes. You may be a shareholder. You'll certainly be an advisor in some capacity to a network of people, and you're a social media user. And so you can activate that level of influence. Again, you know, that's another factor up of the influence that you can have. But where I think we all need to be pushing is our influence at a society level. And at the society level, really, our influence is in the tens of thousands. So here, you are a voter. You potentially could be a lobbyist. So you could be somebody who speaks to politicians, somebody who presents research or presents problems or solutions to people who have power. You could be an industry activist. So for example, within the construction sector, I have trade associations that I can talk to. I pay membership fees to different professional institutions, like there are architectural institutions, there are surveying and engineering institutions. They all have somebody who's talking to government within that organization. Do I know what they're saying? Do I know what they're asking for? Well, if I don't know, I need to find out. And maybe I need to go and meet with them and say, what are you doing about the furniture industry's impact on climate? What are you asking for? And, you know, influence them. And also as an activist. Now, I am running out of time. I've got a much shorter time scale than I thought. But I'm just going to talk quickly about understanding and prioritizing the impact that you can have. And the first thing I'm going to talk about here is net zero. Now, the reason this is so big is because we're all talking about carbon and the impact of carbon on the climate. But everyone is jumping onto the net zero wagon. And net zero won't necessarily be the most important thing for you or your organization. So I just want to give a little note of caution here to please not just jump into setting a net zero target. Because if you're an organization that has fairly low carbon emissions, you're wasting your effort and your energy on something that you have very little influence over. It might be that your influence is in something much bigger. So I work with executive teams, and I mainly work with executives for one reason, and that's because they have the power and the resources to really make a difference. And I'm afraid to say, through my experience, that if the executive team within an organization do not get sustainability, they don't understand it, and they don't prioritize it, then I genuinely believe I can't help them. I will do my best, I will sit with them and I will work with them to try and help them understand sustainability. But if they keep on going with an intention to greenwash and try to pretend that they're having more impact than they're really having, then we say goodbye. Because in the green transition, some businesses will die. And I genuinely believe most businesses that exist today are not sustainable. They will not survive the climate crisis. They will not survive the battle for resources. They won't survive the mental health crisis and the fact that people are leaving their organization because they are not existing with purpose. Those organizations will die, and we just need to let them have a good death. And we need to move forward with innovative, passionate organizations who truly believe in the green future and are investing in it. They don't expect that a company pulls together a sustainability committee. Now, this happens all the time. You know, you may be familiar with this. You go to your boss and you say, I really care about the climate crisis. And your boss says, brilliant. You go and set up a team of people. You can meet after work or you can meet during your lunch break. You're not going to get any extra money and you're not going to get any extra training and I'm not going to give you a budget. But go away and form a committee and come up with some ideas. And then you can come back and pitch those ideas to us. And if we think they'll save us money, then we might let you do it. Hand in your notice today. Like that. No organisation is going to change if that's the way that they're approaching this. You need resources and you need empowerment. Now, I don't have time to go through all the rest of my slides, I'm afraid. I was going to go through a huge amount of tactical things about how you do this. If you want to understand how we go about prioritising our action in organisations, come and talk to me and I'll happily have a chat with you over cocktails. I think we're having cocktails. But I will just give you the headlines. If you don't know where to start, the way to start is by looking at the scale of impact. So we start with very, very rough. Don't worry too much about getting scientific about these things. You just need to look at your impact as an organisation and you need to start thinking, where do I have a small-scale positive impact and a large-scale positive impact? What gives me a small-scale negative and a large-scale negative? And just start mapping it out. And you will find that there are a number of really interesting things that come out of this exercise. So most of what we do as organisations is small-scale, sadly. And then we go and shout about it, saying that we're doing great things. So the sorts of things that we do in our organisation, buy renewable energy, brilliant. You know, we might go for a certification, like a B Corp certification. Well done, that's great. But really that stuff is just good housekeeping. There may be some negative things that we do. You know, we might have air-conditioned offices and so on. We've got to live with it. You know, that small scale, try to fix it if it's nice and easy, try to fix it if it's straightforward, but don't sweat it. Don't spend too much time and energy on it. Now, there are some organisations that have a large-scale negative impact, and those things might be things like negative lobbying. And those are things that you, as potential employees within those organisations, can start calling them out on and start calling into question. But I'm just going to spend one moment on the large-scale positive impact stuff because it's not necessarily what you might think it is. Participate in protest. Make your voice heard. As an organisation, participate in lobbying and speak to power. Understand where power exists within your industry and seek to influence that power, because then you're not just changing your company for the better, you're changing your whole industry. So I gave the example in a talk earlier about writing some aspirational building regulations that have now become a new standard for design in UK building design and construction. That has changed a whole industry. And those people could have spent that time just writing a really kick-ass sustainability policy for their company. It doesn't matter how big your company is. You're still only tiny on a global scale. But if you can change your whole industry and the way that your industry works, that then has ripple effects out into other industries and into other countries. And finally, meaningful is the word that I live by. We can all effect change in some way, but the question that we all have to ask ourselves is, are we spending our time, our energy, our resources on change that is truly meaningful, and that we all have it within us? So thank you very much.